That's Vav Amar Aleph.
Late already.
Don't worry, we'll make up for it. Tikra she'ein aleha maziva. Or if you have a roof, tikra is a roof. You should know that from the last DAF. We were talking about the gzeras tikra. So the roofs in those days, the time of the Mishnah, I guess, the time of the Gemara, were made out of planks of wood. Generally speaking, they were 4 tefachim wide. So if your roof was covered with these 4 tefachim boards of wood, and the maziva was like a cement that was like poured over it, I guess to protect it, I guess similar to we have shingles or. So tikra she'ein aleha maziva. If you had a roof without this additional layer covering over the boards, Rabbi Yehuda. So you just had the boards. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Rabbi Yehuda says it's a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai Aimer mefakfek v'noitel achas mibenatayim. In order to make the sukkah kosher for using on sukkahs, you have to pick each one up. Mefakfek means like to shake it, move it around. So essentially what you're doing is taking it off and putting it back on. So you're reapplying the schach. V'noitel achas mibenatayim. And you also have to remove one from the middle. So you have to move. I think it means you have to remove every other one. Mishami says, right? Mefakvik, v'noitel achos benatayim, and you have to put kosher schach in its place. Okay, so you have to do more than one action to fix this roof. One is you have to reapply the schach, and one is you have to remove in between the schach puzzle. You have to put in schach kosher. Ubeis Hillel Aimrim mefakvik oy noitel achos benatayim. Either or will be good. You could either pick it up and put it down, or you could remove the pastel schach from between the kosher schach and put kosher schach there. You remove the pastel schach, remove one in between, and you put kosher schach there. Rav Meir Aimer, noitel achas v'benatayim ve'enim mefakvek. Rav Meir says there's only one option. You have to take one out from the middle, otherwise it's no good. So again, we have a machlokes, just like we had before, a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Meir. Again, we have a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Meir, but Rabbi Yehuda is saying that it's based on a machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. So according to Beis Hillel, all you have to do is shake the schach. According to Beis Shammai, you have to shake it and remove. According to Beis Hillel, really, you could do either one. And according to Beis Shammai, you have to do both. But Meir says no, you don't have to do both. You could just take one out from the middle, and that's enough.
Did we say previously that 4 tefachim is already considered permanent?
That's the machlokes in the Mishnah previously.
Previously, it was
But the Gemara discussed what the machlokes of the Mishnah in the previous Mishnah was.
right.
If nesarim, if they're pasul or kosher, and the Gemara explained: is it talking about 4 tefachim or is it talking about 3 tefachim?
Depends where.
So the Gemara is going
to. Or in the middle.
Yeah. But it's very similar. The Gemara is going to ask that. The Gemara is going to ask about the redundance of the 2 Mishnayos.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Bishlam Beis Hillel, says the Gemara. Bishlam Beis Hillel. So we understand Beis Hillel. Taimayu mishum tasav v'lo min asui. Again, Beis Hillel said you could do either one. You could pick up the boards, or you can remove one from the middle. So we understand that because tasav v'lo min asui. You made this roof. You covered this roof of the house in a way that it wasn't kosher for a sukkah because you put it for the roof of your house. And now you want to sit in there for sukkah, so that we already discussed this concept of tasav v'lo min asui. It was already made b'psul, or it was made for a house. So therefore, you have to do something now to fix it. So imefakvik aved le'maisa. Inoitel achas mibenatayim aved b'maisa. Anything that you do a maisa, so that fixes it. Ela Beis Shammai mai taimayu. According to Beis Shammai, what's the reason? Why is it? Why is it only? Why do you need both? Imishum like manavshach. Imishum tasav v'lo min asui. If the problem is because it was made b'psul, so then b'chadasagi. One of them should fix it, just like Beis Hillel. Imishum gzeras tikra. If the problem is gzeras tikra, that we're worried that it looks like the roof of your house because the boards are 4 tefachim. So then v'noitel achas v'benatayim sagi. That's the only one that's going to help. It's only going to help if you remove one in between and put kosher schach there. Otherwise, it's going to look like the roof of your house. So why, according to Beis Shammai, do you also need to be mefakfek? That doesn't do anything. Says the Gemara, L'oila mishum gzeras tikra. The problem over here in this Mishnah, the reason why you need to do something here is because gzeras tikra. It looks like the roof of your house. V'hachi ka'amri. This is what they mean to say. This is what Beis Shammai is saying. Afal pisha mefakvek, even though you were mefakvek, like Beis Hillel says, you could do either one. But Beis Shammai is saying no. If you were mefakvek, inoitel achas v'benatayim in iloiloi. If you took one out from between, then it's good. If not, not. In other words, what they're trying to say is, don't think you can get away with just being mefakvek, just moving up the schach and putting it back down. That's not enough. You still have to remove one in between, because otherwise it's Gzeras Tikra. It looks like the roof of your house. Rab Meir Aimer, that's Rabbi Yehuda explaining Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Then Rab Meir says, says the Gemara, Yihachi Eim HaSeifa. I'm sorry, thank you. Yihachi Eim HaSeifa, if so, look at the end of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Rab Meir Aimer, Noitel Achzav Einatayim, Avalo Yifakvek. You can only take one out, and if you want to fix this for a sukkah, you can only, right, it's the same thing, Avalo Yifakvek. Rab Meir Hainu Beis Shammai comes out. Rab Meir and Beis Shammai are saying the same thing. So what's it doesn't sound right in the Mishnah. Hachikar. So the Gemara answers, Lo Nechlaku Beis Shammai. This is how to read the Mishnah. This is what Rabbi Yehuda means to say. Rab Meir means to say. Hachikar. Lo Nechlaku Beis Shammai uBeis Hillel b'davar zeh. Rab Meir is saying they're not arguing. Rabbi Yehuda said it's a machlekes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and we always take Beis Hillel. Rab Meir says no, there's no machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Even Beis Hillel agrees that you can only take one out from in the middle. It's Gzeras Tikra otherwise, and being mefakvik doesn't help. So now the Gemara, this is what you were saying before, David. My kamash malan. So what's the chiddush of this Mishnah? The Rab Meir is like Gzeras Tikra of Rabbi Yehuda, less like Gzeras Tikra. So basically, what comes out is whether or not we say Gzeras Tikra over here. We already argued about this in the last Mishnah, right? The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah before, Mesachach and Benasarim, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says in the previous Mishnah, you're allowed to use boards to be Mesachach on top of your sukkah for Schach. Rab Meir Oyser, and Rab Meir says no, and the Gemara discussed it over there that the problem was why yes and why no, whether or not we say Gzeras Tikra, whether or not it looks like the roof of your house, and we're worried that you'll just stay inside for sukkahs. Rab Chia bar Abba. So what's the chiddush in this Mishnah that we don't know from the last Mishnah? Rab Chia bar Abba, Rab Yechanan. Rab Chia bar Abba says the name of Rab Yechanan. Reisha, the first Mishnah is talking about Benesarim Meshupen Askinan. We're not talking. It's Umishum Gzeras Kalim Naguba. It's not like we initially thought that it's a Gzeras Tikra that looks like the roof of your house. Rather, you're using boards that are shaped, they're slanted, they come to a point at the end, so it's not really a keli, but it looks like a keli. It could be used, it could be mixed up with a keli. So the problem is, according to the opinion in the previous Mishnah, according to Rab Meir that says it's usher, it's because it's Gzeras Kalim. If you use that, you might come to use real Kalim that are Makabal Tumah, so we don't let you even use that. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, we don't make Gzeras Kalim. So the Gemara asks on that, Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, which said in the Gemara before. The Amar SUKKAH b'chitzim zecharim k'sheira b'nekevos psula. We had a Gemara earlier that says if there's male arrows and female arrows. Basically, it's the arrow. The zecharim are the ones that basically what it is. It's a piece of wood that comes to a point. So. Again, it's not real keli, it's not makabel tumah, because all it is what they call pshute klietz. Pshute klietz is a straight piece of wood. It's not shaped into anything, so it's not makabel tumah. But since it comes to the point where the Gemara's question before is whether or not we make a gzera atu the chitzim nekevos, which have a base kibble that has an area where you could put something in, like you screw one part of an arrow into the other. So the nekevos are puzzle because that's really a keli, but the zecharim it's only a problem of a gzera. So Rabbi Yehuda Marav earlier said SUKKAH b'chitzim zecharim k'sheira v'nekevos psulim v'loy gazar zecharim atu nekevos. We don't make a gzera. So hachanami loy nigzar nasarim meshupin atu kalim. We shouldn't have a problem over here with these pointed boards or beams for kalim, right? So the Gemara changes the pshat. So the question again was, what's the previous Mishnah different than this Mishnah? What's the chiddush here? Both Mishnayos, the previous one and this one, is talking about Gzeras Tikra. We're worried about it looks like the roof of your house. Why do you have to argue about this two times? Seifa Rabbi Yehuda, the Ka'amar Leib, Rabbi Meir. So it's really one machlekes. It's right. Machlekes is whether or not you could use these boards if it's a problem of it looking like the roof of your house. Now Rabbi Yehuda says to Rabbi Meir here in this Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda the Ka'amar Leib, Rabbi Meir, Amai ka'asarta b'nesarim mishum gzeras tikra. Why are you saying that it's usher to use these boards because it looks like the roof of your house? Hi svara lo Beis Shammai. That's the opinion of Beis Shammai, and we always go like Beis Hillel, right? Beis Hillel like Gazri. Beis Hillel doesn't make the Gzeras Tikra. So why are you, Rab Meir, saying like Beis Shammai? We pass on like Beis Hillel. But Rab Meir, Rab Meir answers him back, no, lo nechlaku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel b'davar zeh. There is no machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel agrees that you're not allowed to use it because it's a problem of Gzeras Tikra over here. Okay, so Hani Chala Rav, this whole explanation of the Mishnah only works according to the Rav. Remember before we had a machlekes on Gedalia and Aleph in the previous Mishnah where their argument takes place. Whether either it's by boards of 4 or by less than 4. So Hani Chala Rav, the Amar machlekes b'sheyesh bohen arba. This works according to Rav, which says the machlekes of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, if you could use those boards, is only by boards that are 4 tvachim wide. The Rabbi Meir is like Zeres Tikra, Rabbi Yehuda less like Zeres Tikra. Rabbi Meir holds it's puzzle, and Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. Because there's no problem with Zeres Tikra. El Shmuel, the Amar b'she'ein bohen machlekes, b'she'ein bohen arba machlekes, that they're arguing when it's less than 4, which means to say that when aval yesh bohen arba divya kol psula, if they're already 4, everybody agrees. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir agree that they're no good. You can't use them. So then, this Mishnah is safer, but my pligi. What's the machlekes over here? The way Shmuel looks at this Mishnah, this sukkah is covered with boards of 4 tvachim. It's puzzle across the board. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, if they're both Zeres Tikra, everybody would agree that it's Zeres Tikra. So the Gemara answers, "Bibitule Tikra kamiflagi." What?
Across the board.
Across the board. Very good. Bibitule Tikra kamiflagi. The machlekes over here in this Mishnah is in the previous Mishnah we were discussing. Can I go ahead and create a sukkah with boards of 4 tvachim? So Shmuel says that both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir agree that you can't do that. That looks like you're building a house. You can't do that. Here you already had a roof. You had a house. Now you're taking off the cover of the roof and you're left with a bunch of boards. You want to know, could I use it for sukkah? Is there something I can do to turn this into a sukkah? So then we have a machlekes. It's called bitule tikra. Taking away the roof, being mevatel the roof of the house and making it into a sukkah. So Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, if you shake it around, if you move it up and down, that's good enough. Rabbi Meir says, no, you have to take one out. That's the machlekes. So the question was, what's the difference between the previous Mishnah and this Mishnah? The answer is they're both talking about Zeres Tikra. One is creating it to begin with, and this one is taking away the roof, destroying it.
What about to move it around? It's pretty knicker that if I put something that's kosher skach in the middle of this roof, that obviously it's not my house anymore, right? I mean, it's pretty clear if I put some, I don't know, whatever, palm fronds or something.
So that's why our mayor says that's what you have to do.
Right, in the middle of it. No, I'm saying, why would I have to even bother with the rest of it? I mean, it's clear, but it's not, it's something which is awry at that point, right?
Well, technically speaking, you could put something just in the middle. If you have if it's less than 4 amas from each wall, like we said in yesterday's DAF, then it is good if it's in the middle. You use DAF and akuma on both sides.
No.
And all you need is in the middle. Yeah.
So we wouldn't have to lift it up.
Right.
Learning that.
Yeah. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Hamakara sukasei b'shvudin. If somebody covers the word makara that comes from the word like the roof, like if you roof your sukkah, if you cover your sukkah with shvudin, which is like a shpud is like a spit of wood, a spit of metal, no?
Steak.
Yeah. Okay, so if you use these spits, oy ba'arukais hamita. Arukais hamita is like one end of the bed. So we'll see in the Gemara that it's talking about like either the headboard or the foot or one of the sides, but it also has the 2 legs attached to it. We'll see in the Gemara. So arukas hamita, like a piece of the bed. If you covered your sukkah with either one of these, clearly the Mishnah is implying that these are both examples of pasal schach, because they could be makabel tama. They're used, so they have a use. They're a keli. Im yesh ravach beinayim kemaisan kshera. If you have the same amount of space in between every bit of schach pasal, you have an amount of space of schach kosher, the same amount, then kshera. So the words of the Mishnah are im yesh ravach beinayim kemaisan, like them. Yeah, that's what the Gemara is going to discuss. So at this point in the Mishnah, it sounds like if there's the same amount of space of schach kosher, then it's kosher. Now the Mishnah says another halacha, hachaitit begadish, which we touched on earlier also. Hachaitit begadish, if somebody digs out from underneath a pile of a haystack, a pile of hay, which is kosher schach technically, but here it was just made as a haystack. It wasn't put on top of a structure of a sukkah. It was just that now you dug out from under it, lases loy sukkah, to make for himself a sukkah. Ain't a sukkah. It's not a sukkah like we learned pasav lemon asa, because it's just there. You didn't make it. You didn't create a sukkah. And we'll discuss that in the Gemara on the next stuff. So says the Gemara, Lema tahavi to yufta. Let's say that this Mishnah refutes that which Rav Huna Berei Rabbi Yeshua said. The itmar, because he taught us parutz ka'omed. He says that with regard to Shabbos, with regard to a lot of things, but he said it with regard to Shabbos, parutz ka'omed. Papa Amar Mutter. The Brisa says, or the Gemara says, Paratz Ka'omed, if you have the same amount, if you have a wall. So with regard to Shabbos, in order to create a Rishus HaYachid, you have to have a walled-in area. And the question is, let's say you have breaks in the wall. So if let's say you have the same amount of closed space as open space. So every few tvachim you have the same amount of closed same amount of fence. You have a space. So parotz ka'omed, closed is parotz is open, the same amount of standing fence. So it's equal. Rav Papa Amar Mutter, it's good. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua Amar Aser. Parotz ka'omed is not good. It's not. You're not enclosed by walls if you have the same amount of open space as closed space in this area. So the Gemara is suggesting that our mission over here of covering your sukkah with schach pasel and it's equal to the schach kosher is not like Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, because Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua says parotz ka'omed is good. Our mission says it's no good. I'm sorry, the opposite. Our mission says it is good. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua says it's no good. It's usher, right?
One is talking about schach, one is talking about walls.
True.
Make a connection.
Yeah, but the question is if it's
We had that before. We went to Rivke.
It is different, but okay, we'll see.
I don't know.
Amar Lacha Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua says, "My kemaisan benichnas v'yaitze." When we say kemaisan, so this is the way Rashi explains at this point in the Gemara. When the Mishnah said the word kemaisan, that you have next to the schach pasel the same amount kemaisan like it in schach kosher, we mean generally whenever we say something like that in the Mishnah or in Shas, when we say kemaisan, we don't mean literally kemaisan, exactly the same. When we say kemaisan, generally we mean benichnas v'yaitze. It means it has enough room, so you have schach pasel, and then you have the same amount of space. What does same amount of space next to the schach kosher mean? It means that you could put it in and out. So there's a little bit of leeway. There's a little bit of extra airspace. So in other words, you're going to have, let's say, 3 tvachim of schach pasel, or I don't know, let's say more even, schach pasel, and then right next to it you're going to have 3 plus of schach kosher. So then,
What's nichnas v'yaitze then?
nichnas v'yaitze means it could get in and out of the space that you left for it.
Oh,
so when we say kemaisan, we don't mean literally exact dimensions. So if you go measure the good schach against the bad schach, it's going to come out that the good it's a little bit more because of that airspace left for going in and out. So the Gemara asks, what do you mean? Why are you saying that whenever we say kemaisan, whenever we say it's exactly alike, it doesn't mean that it's exactly alike. Really, it means there's enough space for it to get in and out. So there's a little extra airspace. It is possible to be mitzamtim and to make it exact. So if you say in our Mishnah that if you have schach pasel and then schach kosher kemaisan, people are going to go do it exact, and you're going to have the Mishnah says it's kosher, but really it's going to be pasel because you don't have extra schach kosher. Rami says b'ma'adif. No, the Mishnah is talking about where you actually made it more. You made more space. It's not so. B'ma'adif means you made a little extra space in the kosher area. So the beginning we were saying in general when we say kemaisan, it always means a little bit more. So the Gemara says no, it doesn't have to mean that. It could be mitzamtzim. So now the Gemara says no. Over here specifically in this case, we're talking about where you did make it the space a little bit more. Rava says, afilu teima, even if you say afilu teima b'she'ein ma'ad, if you didn't make the space any extra. Im hayu nasunim shesi, nice than erev, nice than shesi. If the schach pasel was going one direction, you put the schach kosher in the other direction, whichever way that is. So if you do, so if you have the schach pasel going this way, you have the schach kosher going this way. What's the point? So basically, if you have the schach pasel going like this, and you have the schach kosher going on top of it, it's going to have to go over the edges in order to stand, in order to hold itself up. It's being held up by the schach pasel. So the schach kosher is mevatel what's under it. So since it spills over the sides a little bit, even though it's the exact amount of space that you're leaving.
Over a solid area?
What?
It's going over a solid area.
Yeah, the schach kosher on top of the schach pasel is mevatel what's under it. And we only look at so it's going to be more schach kosher than schach pasel.
For the picture, it's crisscross.
No, not crisscross.
Okay?
One's going this way, one's going that way.
Yeah, it's not really crisscross. Oy baruchas hamita. So, okay, the Mishnah then said if you cover your the other example of the Mishnah was of schach pasel was aruches hamita, like the long side of the bed. What is this? We're going to discuss this in tomorrow. Let's say this is a proof l'Rav Ami bar Tevyumi. Let's say our Mishnah is a proof to Rav Ami bar Tevyumi, because Rav Ami bar Tevyumi said, "Damar Rav Ami bar Tevyumi, SUKKAH b'baloi kelim." If somebody uses for schach worn out clothing, like ripped up, like shmatas, psula, it's pasel. Now, what does shmatas have to do with harukas amita? Harukas amita comes from a bed. A bed is a keli that can be makabel tumah because it's a keli.
But it's wood.
So wood could be makabel tumah.
I'm saying this is.
Oh, right. No, but baloi kelim, clothing could also be makabel tumah. It's also a keli. Clothing is called a keli, but shmatas is only coming from a keli, but now it's not a keli. So it's the same thing, really. Arukas Amita was at a point where it was makabel tumah, but now that it's broken off of the bed, it's not makabel tumah, or it shouldn't be. And baloi kelim also, it sounds like it's the same thing because it's shmatas coming from clothing. So we're trying to say that our Mishnah, which says that this Arukas Amita is called SUKKAH Puzzle, it's no good. In other words, that would imply that it's not makabel tumah. So this baloi kelim is also same thing. So we want to bring a proof to Rabbi Abi Bar Tivumi that since he says you could use for SUKKAH baloi kelim, these materials, because it's not makabel tumah. So I guess it's talking about something like pishtan or something which grows from the ground. So it's natural, cotton. So it grows from the ground. It's Gedalia karka, and it's not makabel tumah. So that should be okay. It seems like it's the same thing. That's what the Gemara suggests. Let's bring a proof to him. So the Gemara says no. Our Mishnah is going like Rav Chanan. Rav Chanan Amar Rabbi, which says, we're talking about in our Mishnah, when we say Arukas Amita, we don't just mean a piece of wood which came off of the bed. We're talking about a whole side of the bed. Or or like the whole head of the bed, or the foot of the bed, which basically means, like I explained before in the Mishnah, that it's a piece of wood which goes along the whole side and two legs. So that already is not just a broken off piece of the keli. That in itself could be a keli. So we're saying Kida Amar Rav Chanan somewhere else in the name of Rabbi that it's talking about a long piece of the bed with the two legs. Hachanami baruka b'shtei kra'ayim. Here too we're talking about a long piece of the bed with the two legs attached to it, or b'ktsara b'shtei kra'ayim. So therefore it's still considered a keli, and the Gemara is going to discuss where it's still a keli. Heicha itmar. We're saying that we're basing this on that which Rav Chanan said somewhere else. Where did he say this? The Heicha Itmar de Rav Chanan, Amar Rabbi. Aha, he said it over here. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. We're on to the top of Tez Zayin and Alf now. We'll just go a few lines down. Why? Mita. Why? Because you don't have to get to work yet. Mita mitamas chavila umitaheres chavila. The halacha is that a bed, when it's there's a machlekes over here, but according to the first opinion, which is Rabbi Eliezer, a bed which is complete could become tamei, and if it becomes tamei, it can only become tahar. You can only put it in the mikvah when it's whole. You can't take it apart. If you take it apart, then it loses its status of keli, and then it can't become tamei like that. And if it did become tamei and you take it apart, you can't be mitaher it like that because breaking it apart itself makes it tahar. You can't put it in the mikvah when it's broken apart. So mitamei. Mita mitamas chavila, it could become tamei only when it's complete. Umitaheres chavila, and it can only become tahar when it's complete. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, machachamim aimrim mitamas evarim, it could become tamei when it's in pieces. Umitaheres evarim, and it become tahar even when it's in pieces. Mind you, what are we talking about? What kind of pieces are we talking about? Amar Rav Chanan, Amar Rabbi, arucha b'shtei kra'ayim. Like we're explaining over here, it's talking about a piece of the bed with the two legs attached to it. So that's a keli. Or Katsara b'shtei kra'ayim, or the head of the bed with the two legs attached to it. Lamai chazia, why is that a keli? What's the use? What kind of use does that have? Says the Gemara, L'mismechinhu aguda, u'lemesav alayu umashta ashli. What you can do with it is, even though it's not part of a bed, it's not a self-standing structure, it's not a keli, but you could prop it up against the wall, this one side of the bed, and tie ropes to it, and you can sit on it. You could create a mattress like that. If you prop it up with other pieces of wood against the wall, there is a use for it. So therefore, it's just that piece of the bed, even though it's broken off the bed, it's not part of the original keli, it itself is makabel tumah, because it's a keli on its own. That's why the Mishnah said you can't use it for... Have a wonderful day, everybody.